Mystery unveiled. Disturbing discoveries in abandoned buildings. I think I found something big. I don't know who's involved right now, but something strange is happening in my city, and I need to let the world know what's happening before I die. I need to be remembered, and even if that's impossible, I need to have done something before I died. I can't just be a corpse. I'm not a detective by trade. I'm a security guard at a few of the local abandoned buildings around my general area. There's not a lot, just a couple of houses, an old factory, and a mental hospital. Now, I mostly don't get to do a lot of sleuthing. My supervisor has explicitly told me not to on multiple occasions. I'm just supposed to go to the locations when an alarm gets tripped and make sure no one's there. But I know that I can do more. I mean, idiots leave behind all sorts of clues about who they are when trespassing. Footprints are a big one. If I can find a footprint in some dirt, I can pretty accurately deduce the brand of shoe that the perp was wearing. Once I even was able to catch some local high schoolers for trespassing by going to all the beer stores in town and asking for the security footage. Mind you, my supervisor chewed me out for that, said I went too far and was only being paid to do my job. He's probably in on it too. This is all to say that I am curious by nature. If I find a mystery, I need to solve it. So, when I first discovered the dead body in the old mill last October, I knew I was going to be busy. It was actually a pretty tame scene, nothing bloody about it. He looked like he had only been dead for a couple of hours. He could have easily been alive still with how fresh he looked. So, I called the cops as I was supposed to and held down the crime scene. I put on some gloves and bent down to look at the corpse. From what I could tell, he had just fallen over and died. Maybe a heart attack, or it could be a murder. When the detectives arrived, they weren't very happy about me disturbing a crime scene, but I told them I was simply there to help. They didn't care and brought me in for questioning, but my alibi was airtight due to a body cam I had purchased for myself. After a lot of questioning, they released me and I was able to head home and sleep, ready for the next day of investigations. The next couple of days were exciting. I mostly hovered around the crime scene, telling the detectives that the alarms had been triggered and I needed to check them out, but that was a lie. From what I could tell, the detectives had no idea who the victim was. The body had no personal belongings other than the clothes it was wearing. Even the clothes had no identifiable brands though, so it must have been homemade or something. Other methods of identification were lacking as well, with no known dental or fingerprint records. The body was a John Doe. This alone was slightly strange, but it happened enough. Toronto is a big city, so you were bound to have a couple of unidentified missing people pop up. So, the police spread around a couple of posters and news broadcasts to try and get the body identified by a loved one. Over the next few days, though, no one ever came forward to claim the body, or at least from what I heard in whispers and talks at the local bar with some of the police. It was another 4 days before the next body was found. I had received a notification late at night that a motion sensor in one of the old houses had gone off, so I had gone to investigate and scare off the trespassers. When I arrived, the house was dark and silent. Usually, I would have been able to see flashlights if there were some inside, so I assumed whoever was inside had seen my arrival and had gone dark. It was as I went into the basement that I found the body. It was lying right in the center of the room, face down. I couldn't tell her exact age from where I was looking, but I could confidently guess she was in her 20s, 40s. I immediately ran over to see if she needed any help, and when I flipped her over, I swore her face moved in the dark. It was only for a moment, but it looked like her face sort of pulled itself together. Like if it was all jumbled and had finally decided on what to be right when I needed to look at it. The eyes seemed to stare back at me though, lazily pointed in my direction and unfocused on anything. Mind you, I thought it was a trick of the light and tried to resuscitate her while calling for an ambulance. Again, the police couldn't find any identifiable things about her. She was another Jane Doe. At this point, my supervisor decided that it would be helpful to put up some security cameras in the main parts of the buildings we guarded. So, if people were to die inside the building, we could get more of a clue about what happened. Even with this, though, we kept finding John and Jane Does. The police even assigned a permanent standby officer for all the buildings that I had to call if any of our alarms went off. Over the last 2 months, there have been 17 bodies discovered in the various abandoned buildings that I guard. No missing people in the city that can match the bodies, no identification, and no discernible injuries on the corpses. I've talked with the other security guards, and they haven't had any of these issues with their buildings either. Luckily, my body cam and alibis have given me ample amounts of evidence for it to be impossible that I am a killer. The police's main theory is that it is a serial killer, but it's hard to prove with all the bodies being in perfect condition and having seemingly no connection to each other. I would probably believe the same if it wasn't for what happened last Sunday. One of the alarms had gone off, this time being in the old mill again. I had come to associate the alarms with the finding of these unidentified corpses by now, so I called up the officer assigned to me and headed over. It was dark when we got there. Being in the thralls of winter, it got dark very early. My police counterpart met me at the building's entrance. So, we walked in expecting to find another body. Even with our flashlights, the building's darkness was oppressive. The old stained windows snubbed out even the small amount of natural light that could be found from the moon. It was as I rounded the corner to the back room of the factory that I realized something was wrong. My partner had been a few feet in front of me and had rounded a corner. Then, when I rounded it, the officer was lying on the ground, collapsed. He hadn't made a sound to make me think he had fallen. He was just lying on the ground, completely still, in an unnatural position. His flashlight was pointing toward another body, lying face down on the concrete. From what I could tell, the John Doe was an old man, with an age that could range from his 50s to 80s. They were lying with the hands and legs perfectly in a line, as if they had been purposefully arranged to be as rigid as possible. The John Doe was definitely dead though, or at least it should have been. They were pale, but looked as if they had been laying there for a longer time than the other bodies we found. I don't know why I stopped and didn't move to help my partner. Maybe it was because I knew deep down that something was off, or that if I moved any closer, I would die. Maybe it was the subtle shifting that I could see all over the John Doe's body. The skin moved like a wave over him, changing in size and color ever so slightly. From what I could see of the face, the nose and mouth were gliding across the face trying to find a position. The eyes, though, were still and dead. The one glassy eye that I could see was pointed in my direction. Not focused on me. It was dead after all, but looking and acknowledging me. I ran back to my car and called the police. I didn't bother to help the officer. He was already dead. When the police arrived and entered the building, they found the 2 corpses, 2 John Does. The place where I had seen the officer lying was now taken up by an unidentified corpse in the same unidentifiable clothing. The original body was also not behaving strangely anymore. The footage on my body cam was corrupted. My story was discounted by the police, and my supervisor told me to take a leave for mental health. But I know what I saw. The dead body killed him. It didn't move or walk or say anything. It just killed him and left nothing behind for his family. And it would have done the same thing to me if I had done anything else but sprint out of the building as fast as I could. I've been seeing things, though, even when I'm just around the town shopping. I swear I'll see someone with a moving face in the distance, but when they get closer, they appear normal. I was walking home from the bar yesterday after trying to relieve some stress when I saw it again. The John Doe. It was lying face down in an alley, completely still. Even though it now appeared to be a woman, and had completely different clothes, I could tell. It looked at me with the same glassy eye. I fear that I will probably die soon. No one will know, and everything that I am will be completely different. It doesn't make sense. I don't know how it's happening, but it has to be something big if no one has noticed other than me. All I know is that I don't want to die alone, completely forgotten by the world. Please, if there's anything I can do, I'll do it. I just don't want to become some nameless body lying face down in an old building.